Welcome in, Outsiders. Tuesday, August 22nd. We have, I think, the most you know, uh, hyped up episode of our division deep dive series here, at least from us within. Obviously, NFC East time. You saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, and we got two Giants fans. We brought John on here to pair up with Dylan for the Eagles, going to represent them. Ben and Corey, I'm Ryan Balliot. And before we dive into this division, there's a topic we need to discuss here. Obviously, you see the shirt hanging up behind me, Jonathan Taylor, the saga that just I know is going to end in the most painful way possible for me. But the Colts gave him permission to seek a trade earlier this week after Jim Irsay said, we're not trading him, not now, not in October at the deadline. Permission was granted. I think it's a leverage move to let him see, hey, we're not going to pay you $16 million a year. No other team is going to either. They're not going to give us the compensation we want from you. It's quoted as a first-round pick or a sum of picks, adding up to a first-rounder. And also, Taylor's still not healthy from that ankle that really knocked him off course back in 2022 last year after a phenomenal 2021 season. But even if a trade is agreed to, I don't think he passes his physical quite yet. So the question is, let's not get hung up on compensation here for what a trade. I know we looked at the Aaron Rodgers trade. We knew it was going to be to the Jets, and we said, what could that trade look like? Let's throw that part out of it. Let me just ask, what team do you think Jonathan Taylor is going to play for in 2023?
Look, I don't know if he's going to play for anybody but the Colts, simply because, you said you don't want us to get hung up on the compensation. No one's paying that. But if you want to look at the team that I think is the most interested in Jonathan Taylor, it's Miami. Now that they have lost out on the Dalvin Cook sweepstakes, they're not going to get Ezekiel Elliott. There's not that many options out there. Now, obviously, if Jonathan Taylor is healthy, he's much better than those other two options at this point in their careers. But I think Miami is the team that makes the most sense and the team that wants a running back the most.
Yeah, classic Ryan here. NFC East show. We're all pumped, and he starts us off with the Colts. Somehow, some way, we got here.
AFC South. I got to bring them up when I can now. We're not going to talk about them until next offseason.
Yeah, probably not. But so Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to be honest, Ryan was a little nice to the Colts. I don't think that this is a go see what you get. I think this is a Jim Irsay's an asshole, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll trade him. Give me a first round pick, knowing that nobody's trading a first round pick. And
exactly.
He's just trying to please Jonathan Taylor's agent. I gave him the ability when he knows damn well it's not going to go that way. But the three teams that should be most interested, Ben mentioned the Dolphins. I would like to add the Bears and the Vikings, two NFC North teams. Alexander Madison, Khalil Herbert, not the best running backs. I especially like the Bears situation. Justin Fields not paid yet. A running attack of him and Jonathan Taylor. I think that could be exciting. You want to do what you can to develop him, have a good offense. The same argument that I can make for the Colts actually paying him and keeping him for Anthony Richardson, you can copy and paste that for why the Bears should want him.
Yeah, but you said Minnesota after they moved on from Dalvin Cook. I mentioned earlier Jonathan Taylor's obviously a better option than him, but after moving on from Cook, do you think they bring in Jonathan Taylor and pay him?
They don't need to pay him. If he gets traded somewhere, he can't demand a contract extension in a new place. He'll have to play out the deal.
Yeah, but at the same time, the whole idea is, to go somewhere to get paid eventually.
Well, right.
That's why you don't want to play where
you're
at.
Unhappy in Indianapolis or in a winning situation for a season in Minnesota and try and rebuild some value?
Yeah,
that'd be my argument for Jonathan Taylor.
You're in the exact same spot if you're Jonathan Taylor as you were this year.
Might be happier.
Yeah, I mean,
no one treats you better than the Colts.
Really don't.
Ryan,
when you retire, we'll let you keep $20 million plus.
I once heard a very stupid man say, "We're not going to sign him to trade him." A former superstar on my team. So take what Jim Irsay says and throw it out the window. It means nothing. Whether he says, they're going to keep him or they're going to trade him. So with Jonathan Taylor, he could very well be traded. I don't think he will be. I really don't think that there's any chance of that. But if he does, the three teams I have in mind, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. And the reason I say these teams, right, the Dolphins, pretty self-explanatory. They wanted Cook. I think we've touched on them enough. But the Eagles, right, The Eagles seem to get everybody at a discount, all these great players. Dylan's smirking, and he knows it's true. But one, you build the Taylor Swift backfield. Two, the Eagles have picks to trade. The Eagles and their whole front office are just, I don't want to say geniuses because it hurts, but the fact that they're able to do all this stuff and be able to make these moves, Taylor could theoretically put them over the top because it takes a lot of pressure off of Hurts, adds a legit running back to their backfield because Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, they were good, but they're not elite. They're not great. And Dylan, I think you could agree. They're not elite. They're not top 5 running
I think
backs.
DeAndre Swift is an elite talent who can't stay on the field.
But Jonathan Taylor is a legit top 5 running back. And I don't think there's an argument of who's better and who would make the Eagles better. Eagles could make that move. And then the Chiefs, I mean, I love Pop, right? Rutgers guy like myself, called a lot of Isaiah Pacheco games. He's still a 7th round second year now. I know he's cheap, but Jonathan Taylor's just an otherworldly talent. The rich can get richer, and both these teams that were in the Super Bowl last year could make good on getting both those getting this guy.
I know we talked about this earlier, Ryan, and stuff, and I think it's probably going to go the way of the Austin Eckler situation where when I get a trade and nothing's going to happen. Because, I mean, honestly, if a trade doesn't get done by the start of the season, like, he's just going to stay in Indianapolis. But, I mean, the teams that should be looking to get him and trying to, I guess, you know, maybe steal Taylor away from the Colts. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I mean, you were looking at probably the Vikings, the Dolphins, probably the Bears. I wouldn't mind the Eagles, honestly. I mean, if they want to go.
You wouldn't mind, John? You wouldn't
I
mind?
wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. Honestly, I would not mind it.
I wouldn't complain if Jonathan Taylor was
I
on
wouldn't
my
complain.
team.
Who's gonna
If I
complain?
had to, I'd take him, right?
Yeah, we'll take
It's like
them. I
if
mean,
you're
if you
giving
don't
them
want
to
them,
us.
Depends on
right?
the price. Anything more
yeah,
than a
no, I
third
mean,
round
you know,
pick,
if
and I feel like
Irsay
Howie's
doesn't
losing the
want
deal.
Jonathan Taylor, I mean, I'm sure the Eagles will take him if we have to. I mean,
They won't
I mean,
extend him.
and if it's anyone can get it done, it's Howie Roseman. I'm convinced that Howie Roseman has like dirt on all the other NFL GMs and just calls them up and just like, you know, I got that picture from the Christmas party.
Hey,
You know.
Joe Shane is squeaky clean.
Howie might be the next one getting investigated now that Dan Snyder's been removed. But one thing I will say about Philly, yeah, they acquire great talent at weird prices, but Nick Sirianni, former Colts offensive coordinator when Jonathan Taylor was there. So he knows how good Taylor can be, especially with that offense, how great they are running the ball, whether it's the quarterback. I mean, I'm sitting here hoping to see Anthony Richardson and Taylor. Could you imagine Jalen Hurts and Jonathan Taylor in the same backfield? So there you go. But speaking of this NFC East, guys, let's get into it. We're going to do this a little out of order. Typically in our division shows, we start from who finished at the top and work our way down. Obviously, we got a lot of Giants and Eagles representation on this show, so we're going to make that the main event. We're going to start with the Washington Commanders. We'll call them for now. With new ownership, there's the possibility they once again change their name. But 8-1 last year. And look, that as even as you can get of a record now with 17 games, they finished last in this division, and that would have been almost the best in the NFC and AFC South divisions. So when you talk about the worst team in the NFC East, you have to pay them a little bit of respect as well. They would have competed in a lot of other divisions, not eliminated in playoff contention to week 17 last year, but their over-under win total only at 6.5. To me, that's a little low. Sam Howell had one start last year as a rookie against the talented Dallas Cowboys defense. They were trying to win that game. This was not a meaningless, let's rest our starters in the last week of the year. Dallas was trying to get the 1 seed. They couldn't get the job done against Sam Howell, who was my favorite rookie in the draft back in 2022. Over Kenny Pickett, over Malik Willis. Sam Howell from North Carolina was a guy I was keeping tabs on. And then, of course, they bring in Eric Bieniemy as their new offensive coordinator / assistant head coach from Kansas City. And I think, you know, there's reports, whatever, players not liking Bieniemy's style. Maybe that's what kept him from getting a head coaching gig all these years. But you can't deny that what he brings, the offense he's going to bring over with him. You already saw it a little bit in the preseason. These Commanders just last night on Monday night ended the Ravens' undefeated streak of preseason wins dating back to 2015. The greatest
Corny.
deepest streak that I've seen since Brock Lesnar conquered the Undertaker's undefeated streak at
The
WrestleMania.
greatest winning streak that doesn't matter.
It doesn't
You're
even
playing
matter.
games that you're not even trying to win.
Let's
Yeah,
also
but
add
it's
in that
cool.
it shouldn't even count as the streak ending because Washington played their starters to win that game against Baltimore's third strings. Like they tried to win this preseason game.
Hey, with only 3 preseason games, you got to get your starters somewhere in there to get the rust off.
Yeah,
That's all.
but
I'm
you
gonna
know what it
Meanwhile,
did,
most
Corey?
teams don't even play them.
You know what it did, Corey? It made Colin Coward say that the NFL cares more about the preseason than the NBA does the regular season today.
I mean, I think that's always been true though.
I don't think anybody cares about the preseason.
I mean, I was
Except
sitting down watching
The
that.
Commanders and Ravens now.
I was watching that game last night. The Heat obviously out of market. I don't know how many regular season games of theirs I'll catch, but the Washington
29 prime time.
Commanders, no more Dan Snyder. That's probably the biggest addition by subtraction. Obviously, they don't have the heavyweight potential some of these other teams do, but I feel like I'm the highest on this team. Where do you guys stand with Washington this season?
Well, the thing with Washington is it feels like you're trotting out the same team as last year. And the other 3 teams in the division that you finished behind, it doesn't feel like they got worse. It feels like they got better. Maybe outside of Philadelphia, it feels like all of these teams got better. And I'm going to tell you right now, probably all 5 of us here in some way deep down know that Philadelphia did get better this offseason. So, when you look at this Washington team, you sit back and you think, okay, they have talent. Yeah, they bring in Bieniemy. Guess what? He's not Andy Reid. And Sam Howell is not Patrick Mahomes. This is still the same Washington team. I think 6 wins is right around where they would be. It's, a tough division, and I don't see them winning more than 2 games in this division. If that.
Yeah, 6 is exactly where I have them, Ben. I do the full schedule prediction, and the Commanders, for me, some of it was just they won some games last year that maybe I would argue that I don't think they can replicate. Sam Howell, while he's talented, he's a rookie. There'll be some growing pains. Yes, he's not a rookie, but first year as the starter. Terry McLaurin in that preseason game that they had to so desperately try, dealing with an ankle sprain already. For a wide receiver, that's something that can linger. Another year for Curtis Samuel has dealt with injuries, and that defense, maybe they're a little overrated. Maybe Chase Young can't stay on the field. Ron Rivera has not been a great head coach, and they are in a good division. Like Ben said, the Commanders, I think 6.5 is a fair over-under for them.
100%. I think, Vegas always knows. It's hard to find an edge on what they're giving you. Everybody wants to be a sharp. They're usually a square. And 6.5 is right around where Washington should be. Sam Howell could be good. We have tape on him now from last year. Went to that Cowboy game as an unknown. And he played well, but now you kind of know, especially with the preseason, you have an idea. Bieniemy, we touched on it. Coming from Kansas City. Reason he couldn't get a head coaching job. He's hoping that he can reinvent himself. I'm sure he'll take a lot from what he learned from Andy Reid, but is that enough? We've talked a lot about you need the quarterback and you need the head coach to win. They may have the quarterback, that's an unknown, but I think it's time to send Riverboat Ron down the stream and get rid of him. He just hasn't been the same since Carolina, since that Super Bowl. He's just been on a downward spiral. Doesn't really have control of that locker room. The defense is good. They have a lot of good players. I don't think, though, that they have a top 2 defense in the division, even with that. I put them at number 3, and I think it's pretty safe that you put them at number 3. They're going to compete. The defense will keep them in games. The offense, I still think, is meh. I don't love Brian Robinson. I don't love Antonio Gibson. Terry McLaurin's great. John Dotson's just a deep threat. You don't really know what you're going to have in him, and then you spent the first rounder on him last year. They just have a lot of question marks. The cornerback they just took in the draft, what was his name? Blanking on it. The guys, help me out. Who's the corner that Washington took? Leaving me out here to flounder. Either way, he has
Banks.
No, the Giants.
No, that's who the Giants took.
That's who the Giants took.
They traded up Emmanuel Forbes.
I thought you said quarterback at
That's
first.
what
I was
thought.
like,
That's what I thought. I was
what?
like,
I was floundering.
That's why you were floundering.
That's
is
why you were
Amon-Ra St.
floundering. I
Brown
thought you
all
said
over again.
quarterback, and I was like, quarterback? Who
This
did
is
he take?
Amon-Ra all over again. But they took Forbes, and Forbes has looked terrible in the preseason and in camp. Just has not been playing well. So Washington has a lot of issues, and it might just need to tear it down and go for a new rebuild, new ownership, start fresh, new name and everything.
I mean, I'm in agreement with all you guys with about 6 wins is probably where they should be at. But unlike Corey, I think they have the building blocks there to be a good team maybe in a year or two. I mean, you're already writing Sam Howell off. You don't really know who you have in him yet. I mean, he hasn't played a full season yet, so you're not really sure who you have. I mean, you can't be writing him off yet. I mean, if he's, turns out, I think you got to at least give him another year, like a year or 2 years to see who you have there. But I mean, you have all these guys. I mean, you have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, you have all these other guys that you just got, and I think that the building blocks are there. And I think in a few years, I think it wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about them maybe, you know, being a contender to win the division. So I mean, not this year though, but maybe in a few years.
Yeah, hopefully things turn around for Washington, obviously, through the last couple of years they've been through. But on to the Dallas Cowboys now. 12-5 last year. That only got them the 5th seed, though. Projected win total 9.5. That's good for second highest in this division right now. The biggest thing I think they did this offseason was getting rid of Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator. I mean, obviously, you trade for Brandon Cooks, you trade for Stephon Gilmore, 2 players up there in their careers. Gilmore played great for us on the Colts last year. Cooks, how many times has he been traded now? I mean, the sun rises, it sets, and Brandon Cooks gets traded. And
he's good everywhere he goes.
He is good. But, I mean, that's the biggest thing. They needed someone else to step up alongside CeeDee Lamb last year. I just don't know. I think them moving on from Kellen Moore is going to really set this offense back. And I don't think the defense dramatically improved for me to sit here and say Dallas is going to get to 12 wins again next year.
Don't sleep on Mozzie.
Look, I don't know. This Dallas team, there are so many question marks, right? Running back. Is Tony Pollard going to be able to handle the full load? What do you have out of Vaughn? What do you have out of Dowdle? Yeah, I like bringing in Cooks. I think, another year for Gallup to get healthy, maybe that changes things. But at the end of the day, this defense is the strength of this team. Yeah, Kellen Moore leaving. Who knows? Does it help Dak with the turnovers? Does it hurt? Because now he has to learn a new system. Who knows? But I do think that this defense is going to carry this team. It's going to keep them in a lot of games. And, you see just having a good defense that doesn't give up touchdowns sometimes is enough. Yeah,
I thought maybe I'd speak for everybody. I'm going to speak for myself here. Dallas is scary, man. I think Dallas has got a really, really good regular season vibe to them. Obviously, they have Mike McCarthy and Dak in the postseason, so we know where that's headed. Divisional round loss. But I like Dak to have a bounce back year. Having an additional weapon in Brandon Cooks. Now Michael Gallup's a 3. Not all the attention on CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson has looked great in preseason for them. Tony Pollard was fantastic last year. Deuce Vaughn, I didn't think he could do it at his size, but in preseason he's looked good. Granted, it's preseason. They are in the top half of both offensive and defensive line. You could potentially have the defensive player of the year in Micah Parsons. Gilmore and Diggs, 2 top-tier corners on this team. DeMarcus Lawrence, the kid out of Michigan, is absolutely massive. He's going to be great for the defensive line. Dallas is scary. I hate to admit it, but Dallas is scary.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, you didn't want to speak for everybody, but you're kind of speaking for me. The Cowboys' biggest issue last year, they could not stop the run. If you ran it up the gut, the Cowboys could not do anything. So what do? They drafted a big D lineman, Mozzie Smith, out of Michigan. That dude is going to work wonders on that D line. And that D line's already stacked. You said it. Lawrence, Parsons. Parsons is working on standing up more because he wants that edge rusher money, not just as a defensive end or a linebacker. He wants that ability to get that top tier defensive money.
Yeah, don't leave Hankins out either. Jonathan Hankins can play too.
I mean, yeah, if this was 6 years ago.
He can still play, man.
I'm writing him off. But-
He's their starter right now.
Or he's writing them off, but Hankins ain't right back yet.
But we talk a lot about coaching and quarterbacks. I think the Cowboys might have the third best quarterback in the division. Hot take.
Sam
But-
Howell.
They easily have the
Dak was
worst
number 4 for a
head
reason.
coach in the division, and I don't think it's by far Mike McCarthy is a detriment to the team, and the fact that he's calling plays in Dallas should terrify every Cowboy fan because Mike McCarthy's not capable of that. You have Aaron Rodgers for how long, and you luck into one Super Bowl, and you're not able to replicate it. How many great regular seasons did Green Bay have with McCarthy and Rodgers just to flame out in the playoffs? And you're only winning those regular season games because you had Aaron Rodgers and he was able to make magnificent plays. Dak isn't him. Dak's on the wrong side of 30. Dak isn't getting better every year. He's actually getting worse. His play calling and his play processing hasn't been there. He just has not been able to make more than one read in a play. It's scary because they have a lot of great players. Brandon Cooks is going to be a great addition. CeeDee Lamb is an alpha. I think Deuce Vaughn's going to end up being the starting running back. I don't think Pollard's cut out to be a starter. I think Pollard is a good complementary back. I think he needs somebody else to shoulder a lot of the carries. You had him paired with Zeke. I like Deuce Vaughn a lot. I think Deuce is going to end up being the starter. Again, I know, hot take.
Yeah, that one's hot. The 5'5"
That's-
guy could carry the load,
that's
but
a-
Tony
that's a
Pollard
small
can't.
child.
It's like the Eagles bringing in Darren Sproles to carry the load.
Hey, I mean, Dylan, I'm sure you love Sproles.
I love Sproles for the role he played.
I really like Deuce Vaughn. Size doesn't matter. I think
We
that
all, we all made a face.
knew it as soon as I said it.
Oh,
You know what I mean? But it's
Comments are gonna let you hear about that one, man.
well, I
Oh,
think
jeez.
just wrap it up on that.
I was gonna
I think
say
I'll wrap
this
it, but
whole
Cowboys, they will be good. Dylan's right. They are scary, but they do have some major holes to fill.
Good luck following that, John.
I think their defense. I think Dallas's defense is scary, and that's probably the best thing about their team right now. But I don't think that, to me, their offense is not that scary. I mean, we've seen who Dak is. We've seen what he can do time and time again. He's just not the guy. Dallas fans keep saying he's the guy, but he's not. He's not going to be the guy. But it's their defense. But they say defense wins championships. So the question is their defense good enough to make up for their offensive shortcomings? That's the real question.
Yeah, Dallas fans have been saying this is our year for the last 30 years, but the Giants, they had themselves a year last year. Not much thought of about them going into the season, but they finished 9-7-1. Brian Dable came in, really helped out Daniel Jones, but their win total only at 7.5 now this year. The biggest thing for me, Dable going into year 2, they retained Saquon Barkley, and for as good of a team as this was, they still only finished in 3rd place. So they get to play a 3rd place schedule. So I'm surprised to only see that over under at 7.5. To me, they're going to go over that.
Yeah, I think they go over the 7.5. I think that 9 probably would have been the mark. But again, this comes down to it being a really good division. Because look, if Washington's pulling wins out of this division, it's not coming against Philadelphia. So, you think, the Giants, they're not going to have a win every week, even though it's a 3rd place schedule. You still have 6 games that are going to be a grind in this division. Now, for the Giants, I think the biggest thing is, offensively, they lacked any kind of dynamicness to them outside of Barkley. Like, you knew they weren't ripping off a big play if it wasn't hit by Saquon. That's not going to be the case this year. You bring in speed, tons of speed. You get Paris Campbell. You draft Jalen Hyatt. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson coming back, hopefully. They bring in Jamison Crowder, who's fast. If he makes the team, who knows? You have Isaiah Hodgins here still. Darius Slayton can burn, but the biggest addition is at tight end in Darren Waller. He makes this offense that much more scary. Daniel Jones has legit weapons. Are they as good as they can be? No, not yet. But they are significantly better on this side of the ball. And I think that's where they needed to make the most improvements, because if you're going to make the investment in Daniel Jones, you have to give him the tools to succeed.
Yeah, Ben, I think the question of how dynamic this Giants offense can be is, has Darren Waller fallen off the cliff? Back to back bad years, whether it be injury, then of course the Raiders were a mess last year, 31 years old. You know, it's not too old for tight ends to not be good anymore. Hell, look at Travis Kelce. But has Darren Waller turned to the other side, or can he still be a true number one for this Giants offense? He's going to be the safety blanket alongside Saquon Barkley. You know, I like that the wide receiver core, it doesn't have a true one, but there's a ton of really solid 2 or 3s there that could step up each and every week. I'm a big Darius Slayton guy. Wan'Dale Robinson looked really good last season before getting hurt. It's, can Brian Daboll work his magic with this offense again? Obviously, there's some limitations, but great coaching can really elevate a team. It did last year, and I don't see why Daboll can't again, especially since this team was able to work it out with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, Dayball is a fantastic coach, and he's going to get the most out of everybody. I think somebody in the offense that we're kind of sleeping on, Daniel Bellinger. He was the safety blanket last year until he got poked in the eye, just through the helmet. And again, that's not a penalty, right? But the NFL refereeing is something we'll complain about a lot this year. But the offense has players now. I'm not worried about the offense. The Giants might actually score 20 or more points on a consistent basis for the first time in 6 years. Think about that. Just to want 20 or more points. That's not asking for a lot. And they might actually have a chance. You know, they got a good kicker in Graham Gano, but they're going to need to get some guys involved. You know, Isaiah Hodgins, Waller. Waller's been lined up on the outside a lot in camp. He's going to play a hybrid tight end wide receiver role almost. And they're going to line him up, a lot of 2 tight end sets with him and Bellinger. It's going to be interesting because how are teams going to really be able to stop him? Because it's going to be tough. Most teams can't cover tight ends, and that's what's made the Chiefs and Travis Kelce so great. Is because when you have a great receiving tight end, it's really impossible to stop. Because are you going to sacrifice a cornerback just to go to a tight end? It's not really great to run a defense that way. Then on the flip side,
I was going to say, especially when you have speedsters like Slayton and Paris Campbell and Jalen Hyatt sprinting past you.
You need all the cornerbacks you can get working on the wide receivers. And then you have Waller, who has looked amazing in camp. The Giants, you know, if you trust Jones, the Giants offense will be great. If you don't think Jones is any good, then the offense will sputter out. The defense, though, is what I'm worried about with them. You have some players, you fix the defensive line. You have 5 deep and decent tackles anchored by, you know, all-pro Dexter Lawrence. Thibodeau and Ojolari need to step up. But you're going to start 2 rookie corners on the outside. Dory Jackson moving to the slot. You can't start 2 rookie corners, one of them being a 6th-rounder out of Old Dominion and Trey Hawkins. I mean, it's just not something that a good team wants to do. You want that veteran presence. You want one outside corner that you can trust to shut down another team's, you know, best option. What are the Giants going to do against the Eagles when you got Devonta Smith and AJ Brown? They're going to feast on them. So it's going to be tough. But, you know, you got to trust the coaching. And Wink has shown that he is a great defensive coach. Just shame he's never gotten a head coaching job. But I think at this point, this is where he's going to end his career because he's getting older and nobody's going to want to give a head coaching job to an older guy for the first time. So the Giants are going to be good. I think 8-9 wins is probably likely, although there is a world where they fall below that 7 mark and lose a lot of close games.
I think the Giants have did their best to set themselves up for success. I mean, you added speed on the offense, you added Darren Waller, so you're not just relying on like just the one dimension of Saquon Barkley making your big plays there. So you give defenses a lot more to worry about now. I think the big question for me is if is Daniel Jones going to step up here and, you know, utilize those weapons they gave him now, because they certainly helped him out, gave him weapons, they set him up for success. So I think it's really up to Daniel Jones now to see what he can do with them. But I think because they even have what the Ryan was saying, the 3rd place schedule. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they go over 8 or 9 wins, especially if, you know, if Daniel Jones gets going and gets in a groove early on. I mean, I can see them maybe sneaking 10 or 11, honestly. So, I mean, that's something that the Eagles definitely shouldn't sleep on the Giants. And, you know, but because I feel like it's kind of flying under the radar of the Giants. I feel like everyone's talking about, you know, Washington with the new owner, and everyone talks about Dallas, but I feel like the Giants kind of quiet a little bit, except for the Barkley stuff.
Yeah, we'll see with the Giants. They snuck up on everyone last year. But Philly, a big year was expected for them. It was a bigger year than many thought. 14-3, they made it to the Super Bowl. Their over under for 2023 sits at a lowly 10.5. It was another stellar offseason for them. And the biggest thing is, can they continue the dominance in this NFC? That's the question with Philly.
Yeah, and look, the thing with Philly is, I said every team in this division arguably got better, except for maybe Philly. But that's not necessarily true, though, either, because you look at what did Philly lose? Yeah, Miles Sanders at running back. Oh, well, in comes DeAndre Swift. Not much of a downgrade, if at all. They were able to retain a good amount of guys. They let a few guys in the defense walk. Their biggest losses really come at the coordinator spots. And it comes down to, is Nick Sirianni a good coach? Was he being helped by his coordinators a lot? Or is Nick Sirianni the guy? Is he able to turn through coaches? And is he able to keep this train rolling? Because who knows, did Shane Steichen have that big of an impact on Jalen Hurts? Or was it Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, as the Eagles fan here, speaking on the coordinators, I think Steichen was a loss. I think losing Gannon may be addition by subtraction. Eagles fans have been harping for him to be gone for a while. There's just so much talent on that defense that they really elevated the way that he looked, in my opinion. But the Eagles, man, people are saying that the fall-off's coming. I don't buy it. I think they have the most complete roster in the NFL, a top 5 quarterback, a top 3 wide receiver duo, a good running back room. Per PFF here, number 1 ranked O-line, number 1 ranked D-line. Games are won in the trenches in the NFL. Ben, you used to play line. You could attest to that. It's probably the same at every level. They have 2 top 20 corners, and they got a lot of young guys on that defense that are going to flourish. Jalen Carter falls to the Eagles in their lap, perhaps the best player in the draft. You still have Nolan Smith all the way at 30. I don't know how he got there. When we did our mock drafts, he was going in the top 15 consistently. Of course, Howie Roseman figures it out somehow without even doing anything. It just falls into his lap, a player like that. You have Jordan Davis taking another step. Nakobe Dean. Yes, Ben, I'm listing the Georgia guys just to get under your skin here. It's going to be a good season for the Eagles. This defense, it's young, but by playoff time, which I don't think anybody here doubts that they'll be in the playoffs, this defense could be better than last year.
Experience is the best thing to have in the NFL, and no team in the division has it more than the Eagles. Do I think their offense takes a step back? Yeah, I think that's the case for any team that's coming off of a Super Bowl and you lose your coordinators. I think you take a step back. Doesn't mean it's a big step back. I think Jalen Hurts, we really get to see if he hit his ceiling already or if there's another gear to this, because there's a lot of things that he could improve on too. And I think he does hit those benchmarks. They got great receivers, great defense. It's a very weak NFC. And the Eagles are the cream of the crop. They should be thinking Super Bowl or bust right now because there's nobody that can stand in their way, I think.
I mean, I think for me, you worry about for the Eagles. I mean, I think they're going to do great, but I worry about some of the youngness on the defense a little bit because you get some of these young guys, make stupid mistakes, stuff, maybe, sometimes not used going up against, NFL pro players there because that's way different from college. But I mean, they definitely have the locker room and the culture there to help these guys and hopefully teach them up. And I like Dylan was saying, by the end of the year, they might have even a better defense than they did last year. But I mean, honestly, I think barring injuries or anything, obviously, I think it's almost a lock. They make playoffs and even win the NFC East. I mean, I just don't think that there's any team better than them in the NFC East that can really take them on. A big thing I don't think we talked about, but if Jalen Hurts does go down, I mean, they have a backup quarterback problem really bad because
Tanner McKee is a star.
Mariota.
I'm talking about Mariota.
I was going to say Marcus Mariota. And
Mariota doesn't have
Eagles
it.
fans know what I'm talking about. Mariota doesn't have it. Tanner McKee is the truth.
That's the guy.
There hasn't been back-to-back winners of the NFC East in like 20 years.
2003, 2004, when the Eagles did it.
They're going to do it again this year. I'm telling you, they're going to do it again this year. They want that revenge from that Super Bowl. They're going to go back, run it all the way back to Super Bowl, but they're going to win this time.
God, I
Well,
hope not.
it's time to list out how we
Clip
think
it.
this division is going to shape out, and this is where I was going to mention no back-to-back division winners in 20 years. And I don't know, maybe it's just for the chaos of it, but I really like what's going on. I'm going to have the Giants winning this division. Eagles in a very close second. They'll be the 5 seed, and they'll probably go on their run from there. And then I'm going to put Washington in 3rd and Dallas in 4th. Yep.
Oh my
Hey,
goodness.
I love Dallas in 4th. You know, look, here's the thing. I think the Eagles do win this division, but there are ways for the other teams to come after them and win it.
Yeah,
You
if
know,
Jalen Hurts
look,
doesn't play.
Yeah, if Jalen Hurts
well,
gets
no,
hurt.
look, wait. Everyone was so sold on Carson Wentz being the quarterback, the next generational guy. It
Until he
was
got hurt.
not that long ago. All of those Eagles fans were still on him, and you were still on him even that year after he got hurt and came back. So don't sit there and say, "Oh, no." All I heard about was Wentz wagon. Stop it. So don't sit there and act like, "Oh, we got one great year out of Jalen Hurts after 2 solid years of development," and tell me that he is the truth. Okay, look, I like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a very good quarterback at this point. I wasn't sold on him early. I am now. But don't sit here and say, "Oh, there's no way the other teams can't win this division." Dallas still has a great defense. And look, who knows? Maybe Daniel Jones takes the jump this year. Giants 1st, Eagles 2nd, Cowboys 3rd, Washington 4th.
Yeah, I have the Eagles going back to back. They are the best, most complete roster top to bottom. It doesn't mean you win games, especially when you're against Patrick Mahomes, but I still stand by it. I said it all last year. I'll say it again. The Eagles have the best roster in the NFL. Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith might take another leap. You know, Darius Slay came out and said that he thinks he's going to be the best wide receiver in football. Obviously, that's a little exaggerating perhaps because they're teammates. But if you're saying that, that means he's better than A.J. Brown, and you're not willing to hurt his feelings if you don't think Devonta Smith is that guy. I got Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, repeat back-to-back NFC East.
I'm still salty about the 2020 season. I still think the Eagles should have gotten the death penalty for that. But, you know, my gripes aside, I'm right with Dylan on that. I think the Eagles finally break that streak, back-to-back division titles. Cowboys and Giants make it real close, and I think they both get back to the playoffs just because of how weak the NFC is. And then Washington, it's going to be the same situation as last year. Maybe this is the one where they finally able to get all 4 teams into the playoffs because all 4 teams are legitimately good.
Eventually, it's going to happen.
Might
Why not
happen
us?
this year.
NFC Beast.
I mean, I think this really hinges on. I mean, I think the Eagles, you know what you have there. I think, but like the Giants, Cowboys, Washington, it seems like there's some question marks around them, and they all hinge on the fact if certain players step up and do good. And for the Eagles, it's just like you just got to do the same thing. So I mean, I have the Eagles 1, I have the Giants 2, Cowboys 3. I think their defense is good enough to overcome Washington and Washington 4th. But I mean, it's very plausible all 4 of these teams make the playoffs. I mean, I think at least the Giants and Cowboys have a shot at going to the playoffs. I mean, NFC's weak.
Shock the world, Sam Howell. Shock the world. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you follow along with us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Outsider Sports 3. Join us next time. We're going to have another special edition of the Outsider Sports Football Podcast Weekend Edition when we talk about the AFC East. Join us next time. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Outsider Sports Football Podcast.
Kyle Pitts.
Fuck Kyle Pitts.